Right. Hello, everyone. It's another Thursday edition of the Infinity Edge podcast. That means it's free. And it's brought to you by the freesportsdepartment.com. Don't
Oh.
try going to that website. That website has images you do not want to see. However, if you want to support the show, you could theoretically go over to the esportsdepartment.com and use the code IEDGE when you're subscribing to use the website. Now, why would you use this website? That's a great question. Right? Great question. Great question. Moving on. I could tell you about all the different stuff we have to offer there. But, I mean, at some point, you've heard the spiel 20 times. I can tell you about CSGO or the stats optimizer or John's betting breakdowns or Gelati's betting breakdowns or you get to see this when it's behind the paywall. But at some point, you just need to remember that from last week's episode so we can stop doing this for a minute at the beginning of every episode. You may hear how upset I am in my voice right now. And that's because some of you out there, the stat boys want some stats. So tonight, you're going to get statted. I'm going to stat you right in your stupid stat faces. And we're going to see how much you like stats after today. I'm joking. I'm not an anti-stats person in general. But tonight, I'm going to try to incorporate some stats and some reasons why we should be skeptical of the stats that we already have. And obviously, it makes sense to use stats if other people are using stats. So there's also ways to go against them, I guess, which is something that we'll probably try to consider more often. But tonight, I'm joined once again by Alan 1 and Alan 2, Ghost and the Hef. Boys, how are you doing?
Pretty great. Amazing intro as always. About ready to talk about some LEC. How about you, Alan?
Oh, always great to start off your new podcast / show with an antagonization of your. I've learned from Michael. So yeah,
100%.
doing
100%.
wonderful. Ready to get into it.
Doing God's work, really.
Yeah.
Regardless of Michael's tone, we all love you here.
It's going to get worse.
But before we hop into LEC, we do have some news and notes if you haven't been keeping track of the Discord. And basically, Robert's freaking out. Crownshot has been picked up by a team. He's going to be playing for Vitality and replacing Comp. And I want to get your guys' quick thoughts on this really quick. Does this make Vitality a better team, a worse team, or is it too much to tell at this point?
I'll start. I think the long run, it'll make them a better team. I think that Crownshot has clearly been a better player throughout his history in the LEC than Comp was. I don't know if it makes them a better team this weekend because, short practice time and all of that stuff. So, I'm not really in love with the angle that Vitality's a good play this weekend or anything like that. But I think long term, it makes Vitality a slightly better team. I just wonder how much AD carries changes have an effect on their team unless one player is really bad, So if tomorrow CLG was like, hey, we're gonna get rid of the old turtle, maybe I would be more excited about that. But Comp wasn't I don't know, he wasn't the main issue with Vitality in my opinion.
All right, Michael, your thoughts on Crownshot coming to Vitality?
Well, Crownshot went to Korea to go back to Europe. That's what happened, right? They were trying to find an apartment, and LS kept getting denied getting apartments, and then Crownshot got signed by a team.
I think that was part of the story, and then he just didn't end up going. I think Nemesis is still going at this point.
Yeah. So, Crownshot versus Comp, I think that the difference between them is not very big at all. I know some people like them a lot, and maybe those people are more focused on the stats that the players bring. I think Comp and Labrov have been a surprisingly strong duo for the past year or so relative to their expectations and the fact that they're underdogs in almost every single game that they play, or at least that's what it's been like for the last year or so. So compared relative to those expectations, I think that they've performed really well. Crownshot coming in, people will just assume it's going to be an upgrade because Crownshot's obviously the bigger name and has been around for a longer period of time. I'm going to have to look into Crown Shot's champion pool to
Right.
make a final determination. So I'll do that. I'll do that while we're on that game.
Okay. Well, the second bit of news I have to bring up is that Astralis has picked up Magifelix to replace Nuke Duck.
Why would they do that?
That's because Nuke Duck is taking time away for personal reasons, according to Astralis.
What's the reason?
I do not know the reason.
Is it because he's bad?
Personnel.
Is it because he's mad at himself
Wait, was
for
it
being bad?
Was it personal PERSONAL or was it personnel POE with the ELL? Because for personnel reasons, like Nuke Duck wasn't cutting it, I understand the move.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be both of those, actually. They might have melded into one, and Astralis was just like, Magifelix, it's your time. Get in here. Try to save this team, even though there's a lot of other problems.
Yeah, Nuke Duck, not very good player. Who would have seen this? Who could have possibly seen this coming where Nuke Duck did not play well? It's really shocking to everyone, I think, and no organization or coach should be criticized for allowing it to happen in the first place. Because how could they possibly know? It's unknowable, really.
Well, that rolls into our first game of the slate. If you guys are ready to hop into that.
Yeah, I was about to say, who cares? Let's move on. So, yeah, let's do that.
All right, so the first game of the slate is going to be Schalke 04, 5-2 on the year, versus Astralis, who we just got done talking about, picking up Magifelix, 1-6. Alan, we can start with you on this one, but I feel like this one's pretty cut and dry. Schalke's should have an easy day at the office taking down Astralis. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that Astralis is the worst team in the league. I think that Schalke is a solid playoff team, so there's no reason to believe that Astralis could pull the upside here to me. So the question always becomes, is this a fantasy relevant game? And for that, I'll move over for the stat boys. I put together a little like bloodiness game rating that I'm trying to do now. You guys can't see this right now because I'm not sharing my screen on Discord, but I have it up on the screen. And so I basically just like did a composite bloodiness ranking based on like kills per win, death per loss, and combined kills per minute, but I weighted deaths per loss a little more because everyone who has ever studied this has said that deaths per loss has more effect on the game than a kills per win sort of stat. And I made 1,000 the median for me, and so neither of these teams really projects well in that way for me on this slate. Like I have Schalke an 879 in a win, and Astralis a 717 because Schalke has been like a very low kill team so far, which was not something that we really expected coming into the season because last year they were different. But I do think that at this point, like 7 games in, there is a little something to them being a little more controlled with this particular roster. So this is a game that I will play a little bit of Schalke if I can get them with other teams that I like in stacks that I like. Like if there's 80 carry type stuff with Schalke, I will do that. But 80 carry captain or mid captains type stuff with Schalke, I'll probably have, a couple lineups, but otherwise I will almost be entirely staying away from this game, I think.
All right, Michael, we'll get your thoughts on Schalke versus Astralis.
Sure. So Schalke is 5-2. That's a stat. Astralis 1-6. If you just went by which team had the better record, which you should not do, Schalke should win the match based on stats. I'm joking. I'm joking. But Schalke is a minus 333 favorite. Astralis is a plus 242 underdog. I think that number is wrong. I think that it like you were talking about, it's kind of going to be difficult to trust them to have high kill up score in this matchup. But I do think that Astralis actually has a good chance to win this game. The stats that I've been looking at more recently, I was actually talking to John about this because he posted a video about stats the other day. And I really think I've had a feeling for a long time, just an intuition, that a lot of these stats do not take a lot of the context of the game into consideration. So, for example, Schalke, much better team, much higher win rate, 71% to 14% for Astralis. Gold per minute as a stat, we're only seeing a 200 goal difference between these two teams. Now, what does that tell us? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes into the game, the goal differential is going to be 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 gold. You're not going to see numbers like that in the first 10 to 20 minutes of the game. The goal differential swings so much more after like the 20-minute mark, because if you have a roughly 2,000 gold lead at the 20-minute mark, that should turn into a Baron. Baron's worth about 2,000 gold. So I really think that a lot of these stats, especially for two teams with higher game duration, they both are up in the 35-minute mark because their games just take a longer amount of time in general, especially Astralis in their losses. They have 19 deaths. 6 of their matches have been losses. So that's really the one that should probably stick out more. The problem with their death per loss stat is that some of them are extremely high. So that's another thing that we're not really doing very often in League of Legends statistics so far. We don't have a baseline to compare these numbers to. Like in a generic game, how many deaths should we expect in a loss? That number is probably between 15 to 17. The fact that they're at 19 suggests that they've been on the higher side of what we'd expect in their range of outcomes. Now, then you have to ask yourself the question, are they at the higher end of things because they continuously fight for objectives, because their games take a longer amount of time? And then the next part after that, and there's so many levels to this, that's why it's tough to kind of trust these stats. Against a team like Schalke, how do they go about trying to win this match? If they had Magic Felix for a longer amount of time, I think that there would be a better opportunity for them to win through mid lane. Abadag is obviously the bigger name. Magic Felix, is Magic Felix the really toxic guy that like no one understood why he wasn't getting picked up, and then it started getting leaked that he's just like an evil person?
That's
I'm
not.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's that far, but I think in solo queue he was like labeled as someone who's toxic. But there's been a lot of toxic players supposedly toxic, like Jensen came from there as well.
Yeah. So another thing that I did is I took the kill differential gold. So for a team like Astralis, our perception of them is that they lose all the time, they don't get a lot of kills, they have a lot of deaths. If you average that out, they would have on average in each game about 2,900 of their gold would be given up through kills. And Schalke, even though they're 5-2, they on average have 900 gold from kills. So that's why I guess we kind of have to ask ourselves once again, do we expect Schalke to be dictating the pace of play, reducing the number of kill opportunities for themselves and the opponent because they're not necessarily looking for these gigantic team fights? The next thing would be the tower gold differential. So tower gold differential, Astralis, because they lose so often, they generally lose 1,500 gold from towers. So every outer tower is worth about 400 or 500 gold. Every inner tower is worth about 300 gold. Then there's like these other bonuses that are involved. So you're getting gigantic chunks of gold every time that you take a tower. If you take those two numbers and add them together, this kind of starts to look like a gold differential we would expect to see at the end of the game. But we're not trying to find out what's it going to be at the end of the game. We're trying to find out what's that gold differential going to be at the important part of the match where, like, you know, they need to be within 1,000 to 2,000 gold with like finished items completed, go into a 5v5 team fight and actually have a chance to win this game. So the kill differential gold would tell me something like they're willing to fight early objectives. Tower gold differential is that they're playing the macro game either well or poorly.
So a quick thing on the gold difference at 15. Astralis right now is at negative 1,183 gold.
Yeah. So some stats that I'd be interested in would be what time does the first tower generally happen against them? What time does the first blood usually happen against them? Because these games do snowball out of control. And I know we're getting a little far away from the match at hand, but this is going to set up how I'm analyzing some of these games further on. And then the last thing, of course, is how many Barons do they take on average per game? So Schalke averages 1, which is a very good number. It's highly correlated with the fact that they've won a bunch of games. Astralis averages 0.43. They lose a lot of games. It's not surprising. But again, that's another 1,140 gold that they need to overcome in the average of their games. I don't think it accurately represents that combined number. I don't think gives an accurate representation of like what is Astralis going to look like if they win the game. And that's part of the reason why it's so difficult to get these ownership projections up very high for Astralis because everyone has this negative perception of this team who loses gold on kills, loses gold on towers, loses gold on Nashor against the league averages. So if I'll go lane by lane and then I'll kind of tell you where I'm at. Broken Blade against White Knight. White Knight has actually looked pretty good in a couple of their matches. Even in losses, they've had some good kill scores. Broken Blade is the kind of player who might go into a carry versus carry matchup that's more volatile. Astralis can theoretically win through top lane. Gilius against Zanzara. Zanzara is more of a cerebral player, has interesting picks like the Shen in the river and stuff like that. I don't think we've seen it on the LEC yet, but Zanzara against Gilius, I don't think that the difference is that gigantic because they both strike me as people who are more macro focused, which would push me against a high kill death total in this game. Abadage against Magic Felix. We don't have any information about Magic Felix, so if you're depending on stats for the mid lane matchup, you don't really have anything besides taking EU Master stats and comparing them to the LEC stats, which I think would be a mistake. Neon and Limit against Jessica and Promiscu. It's really just what team is going to create an advantage on the top half of the map and kind of swing that into a bot lane advantage. So like I said, I think top lane could be extremely volatile. Jungle can be either way because they're both macro focused. And then mid lane, we don't have any stats to really feel good about. So I do think that Astralis has a better chance than plus 240. Schalke has won some ugly games. I'd be happy playing Astralis at 5%, even if it's just 1 out of 20 teams. I think that it is something to get exposure to tomorrow. And if I did that, I definitely want White Knight. I would definitely want I could see myself wanting exposure to Magic Felix because extreme low ownership in their first match on the stage. It's a spot that I like. I think that I'll probably play multiple Astralis lineups tomorrow.
Okay. Any closing thoughts on Schalke versus Astralis, Alan?
No, I would just add, because I think we really got into more like what is a useful stat in League of Legends discussion. For me, that stat has always been the one on Oracle's Elixir called gold spent percentage differential, because at least that stat eliminates the end of game spending a lot of the time, because if you win a team fight at Baron and you go straight down the middle and win the game, then you're not spending that gold. And so the spent percentage differential eliminates that small snowball situation there, and then tells you a little bit about what kind of gold leads teams are getting, or what kind of passive gold leads teams are getting against each other. And like, for me, at least, when I've been handicapping League of Legends, I have found that stat to be the most telling about the difference between their win rate and their gold spent percentage differential has given me a lot of value on betting on underdogs, or even just betting on favorites who are undervalued because people don't believe in them or whatever. And then the stats behind it, especially the gold spent percentage differential, which I have up here on the screen, you guys can't see, is something that I actually value quite a bit. And so like here, if you compare the gold spent percentage differential, obviously it is highly correlated to winning already, but there is some discrepancies here. Like Misfits Gaming, who we've been talking about for a long time as a team that's underrated by their record, has a positive gold spent percentage differential, even though they're 2-5. So like, that's a team that at least at some point in the game is getting leads and knows how to get leads and knows how to spend their gold efficiently. And so that makes me go, okay, 2-5 might not be super fair to them. So that's all I would say about that, and then I'm ready to move on. I don't think that Astralis, I think that Broken Blade is going to stomp White Knight. I don't think that White Knight's very good, and I think that Astralis' bot lane sucks too. So I wouldn't want to play Astralis, but I get the angle. I mean, they're going to be very, very low owned for sure.
Yeah. The one thing I would say about gold spent, it's going to get skewed a lot by blowout wins, right? And that's another spot where if you removed the outcomes that are like just on the ends of the spectrum, it would probably be a lot more telling, because like if I'm Astralis and I lose every game by 2,000 or 3,000 gold, and then I win 2 games by 10,000 gold, it's gonna throw everything kind of out of whack.
Yeah.
So do you look at gold spent in wins or losses, or do you have it just as a total stat?
I usually just use it as a total stat. It's the highest weighted part of like when I tried to make a model to predict the actual percentage outcomes of a game. It's the biggest, highest weighted stat I use. But
I think another stat that would be very interesting to see would be what time in the game does the first 2,000 gold differential happen? Because the 2,000 gold mark is really the most important stat in my mind. Like the holy grail of League of Legends statistics would be like which team got a 2,000 gold advantage first, and if they win the game, that's the expected outcome. If they lose the game, then you can take a closer look and see why they lost the game that they should have theoretically won. And a lot of those matches, you'll see that it comes down to like material things. That's I think it's just anybody out there who has some time that wants to go into that sort of stuff, or maybe create an edge, a larger edge for themselves. I think that's where I would look.
All right. Well, lots of good information there on our first game of the slate. We're going to move on to Vitality versus XL. Vitality are coming to this 1-6 on the year. XL 4-3. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, Vitality is bringing Crown Shot in the 80 carry role to replace Comp. Michael, we'll start with you on this one. Your thoughts on Vitality versus XL?
All right, so their gold per minute differential is like non-existent. It's like 30 gold. The game duration, they both play in games that are about 35 or 36 minutes. Vitality is the slower team at 37 minutes. And what that does tell me a little bit is like if you are a team that loses a lot of games and you're in a game for 36, 37 minutes, you're doing an okay job positionally, and then you're not forcing the issue at like the 20-minute mark, 25-minute mark, and you're probably drafting for late game. So if you're constantly drafting for late game, that means that your chances of carving out a gold advantage at 15 minutes is probably a little bit lower too. So this is the kind of team I would expect where we're like between 5 to 8 kills, and when they're winning the game, they'd be between like 5 to 8 kills, get to the 20-minute mark, win a Baron fight, take a Baron, create a larger tower advantage. So improve their positional, like, because that's really what it is in League of Legends, is the towers that are on the map dictate the positional advantages of the game, because it changes where the waves are, it changes where your champions can go freely, it changes where you can get ward coverage very easy, and then it also changes how you can get to things like Baron or to Dragon, because there are some team compositions where you need to be the first team there, or you're going to lose that fight, just from a positional perspective. The kill differential in gold, Vitality has minus 1,300, XL has minus 120, which you really wouldn't expect from a team that has won more games than they lost. I'm not. I haven't looked deeper into that. I'm not sure what that really tells me. Maybe they're the kind of team that when they lose big. That, I guess that could be it. But they only have like what do they have? 3 losses? 3 losses?
3 losses. Yeah, they're 4 and
Yeah,
3,
so they
right?
Yeah, XL 4-3.
Yeah. So I don't have anything else for that. The positional, meaning the tower gold, would be Vitality minus 1,250 and XL is minus 450 in all contests. So again, that tells me that like Vitality is drafting team compositions that like sort of allow them to overcome the positional disadvantage they expect to have because they're drafting for late game. So the hope is that you're going to be so much more powerful from a material perspective because you're drafting champions that scale better into the late game, build better items, and can push their way into the Baron area and contest that objective, contest the Dragon Soul, contest Elder Dragon. So it's a good way to play if you want the game to feel close. But if you want to consistently win games and give yourself better chances to win games, I think you really should be playing for more of an early game. Maybe that changes with Crown Shot. I highly doubt it. I think it'll be the exact same. And then Vitality actually gets a decent number of Barons, and I think that's because they have lost games where they had either one Baron or multiple, or they had wins with multiple Barons. If you have a win with multiple Barons, it means that you weren't really able to kill off the game when you should have, so that's kind of a negative. And then from the lane by lane, Cries obviously can scale for late game, so Vitality is not necessarily going to have an advantage there. Jigenda is a good player, though. Dan against Skeens, I think we all prefer Skeens as a player, but that says more about Dan than it does about Skeens. Chekolad and Malitza, they're both pretty good. Patrick and Torre against Crownshot and Labrov. I don't really have a big opinion one way or the other. This could be a spot where both teams kind of are playing for that 20 to 30 minute mark, take the game pretty slow, trade towers, trade Rift Herald for a tower, those kinds of plays, and then we get ourselves into a 4 kills to 6 kills at 22 minutes, and then 1 or 2 team fights happens and the game is over. So maybe you get lucky and hit like a 16, 17, 18 win range outcome. But I don't think that happens very often. The only thing that would potentially move me off of that is if Crownshot coming in fundamentally changes how they play the game, which I don't have any reason to expect that's the case. So that's what I have for this one.
Well, we'll kick it over to you, Alan, on this one, Vitality versus XL. Do you have a thought on Crownshot, if he's going to make much of a difference? I know he was the loudest voice on SK Gaming when he played, but do you think he'll take that same role on Vitality?
It's definitely possible. I mean, but I think it's a very, very hard thing to project, and therefore a hard thing to want to build your lineups around. So when I looked at this game and I made the bloodiness ratings that I gave each team, this is basically like the nut low kind of game you could have in the LEC. It seems as if Excel just sets up every game. Patrick gets them in the team huddle. He's like, guys, don't fuck this up. Don't take any deaths. I'll carry us. I'll get us 5 kills at the end and the game's over. So I have no idea who's going to win this game. They're both right around, bad. They're just bad. They're both kind of bad. They have bad GSPDs, like I was talking about earlier. So I do think that this game is going to garner some ownership because you can fit them well with G2, you can fit them well with Fnatic and all of that stuff. And so for me, I want to stay away from this game almost entirely. If it happens that a Patrick stack wins tomorrow, or if a Crownshot stack wins tomorrow, I'm going to live with that outcome because to me, this looks like the least bloody game on the slate. And so, and I do expect, each team to get around 10% ownership or something like that. So I don't want them at all personally.
Yeah, so if you're going to do it that way, like I know you're saying like you wouldn't want to stack them, I think it should definitely disqualify them from being your primary stacks in that situation. But like you said, they do fit well sometimes. So you will probably want to look to see what those potential combinations are with the better teams. Because like if you can get a G2 captain or a Fnatic captain that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise, like maybe it's worth it. But those are the other kinds of decisions that everyone has to make when they're in the lineup building process. It's just like separate, but it is like you said, it's probably something you don't want to play your primary stacks from.
Right, and with that, Vitality and XL are those 2 teams that are in the middle there, price range wise. So
yeah. So I guess one last question would be Hef, if you're going to have these bloodiness ratings, you should track what your bloodiness ratings are going into a game and potentially like ascribing playstyle tendencies to them, because like I think we said it 1 or 2 times last week where the styles of the teams could theoretically clash in such a way that it increases the kill total.
Sure.
So if you have 2 teams that are kind of like these passive teams, I would be interested to track like, this season the 2 quote unquote passive teams played each other 10 times and 30% of the time they had a higher kill score than anticipated or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I think that would be interesting to look at later.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to our third game of the slate, we have G2 sitting at 5-2 on the year versus Misfits 2-5. This one, I've been giving Misfits a lot of hope in the last couple weeks. They burned me a few times. I don't think I'll be going to them here against G2, but maybe Misfits pulls out the miracle and there's a high scoring game, but we'll go to you, Alan, on this one. G2 versus Misfits?
That's the outcome, right? Like, if G2 is going to lose to Misfits, it's going to be one of the higher scoring games on the slate, right? Because both of these
Yep.
teams love to fight, they love to find small skirmishes, and if somehow Misfits gets out to an early lead on G2, like a bunch of teams have so far this split, and we're able to, kind of keep fighting and close it out, then you're going to want Misfits in that scenario. So I will play a little bit of Misfits here. They, like I said, they're 2-5, but have a positive gold spent percentage differential, which is a very, very rare thing. Like sometimes teams will have a positive gold spent percentage differential when they're, close to 500 or something like that. And in that situation, I usually think the team is underrated. But when, you have this kind of losing record with a positive gold spent percentage differential, I think it's a big deal. I think that they are better than 2-5. Obviously G2 is a significantly better team, and I will be playing G2 lineups because Misfits is the same way. They like to scrap, they like to have small skirmishes, so G2 could easily be the highest scoring team on the slate as well. But I do think that no matter how many lineups you're playing, it's not a bad idea to just have one-ish Misfits lineup, because they're going to come in at about like 5% owned or less. And in that scenario, I think they're a really good play on this slate.
All right, we'll kick it over to you, Michael, for your thoughts on G2 versus Misfits.
Yeah, so that's another thing that we should track. I'm trying to have this one kid from Yale put together, like a combination of the ownership CSVs and all that kind of stuff for me, because like I don't have time to do it, but like I'm willing to pay someone to do it. So I guess I should kind of open it up to anybody who's watching. If you want to make like 10-15 bucks an hour to create some kind of database, maybe I should just talk to Roberts about it. But I think that there's a lot of good information out there that we should be tracking, at least looking for trends. So one trend that we should be looking at is what kind of ownership percentages do the teams playing G2 get on average? Because it should be higher than 5 to 10%. Because yes, they do lose more often, but the games that they win, they're more impactful, like on the slate as a whole. So there's got to be some kind of sweet spot there where you can feel okay playing Misfits, or the team playing against G2. In this case, it's Misfits. I don't know if anybody would have been perceptive enough to realize what I've been doing for the past minute or so. I've been looking at my other monitor because I don't want to look at my spreadsheet that's in front of me. I don't know what G2 and Misfits are in terms of like kill differential, tower differential, all that kind of stuff. What I'm trying to think right now before I look at the numbers is, what do the play styles that I perceive from these two teams, what would I think the stats kind of are going to tell me? So for a team like G2 is always looking to fight you. And because they create these leads in the early game, the First Blood King Jankos, it generally seems like they're just snowballing the shit out of the game. They get Rift Herald, they get as many dragons as they want, they get a positional advantage. They get a positional advantage because they're willing to use their tempo from the early game to push through potential material advantages on the other team. So that's what I do love about G2. There's really like the tempo aspect of the game, material aspect of the game, positional aspect of the game, and they all kind of interact with one another. When you have tempo, like G2 has tempo, it's really up to them to figure out how this game is going to go. And that's why I think in a lot of their losses, they have these gigantic death totals. So now let's think to ourselves, what should Misfits stats look like? Misfits is a team with Kabe who is looking to that 20-minute mark, similar to Vitality, similar to XL. They want to play for that 20-minute situation because they are not great tempo teams. They're not great positional teams. They really are willing to give up things in order to get to a team fight that they can coin flip, which is bad for their long-term success. But in the meantime, like they will get some wins that you maybe don't expect from them. Misfits, I think, is a good enough team to compete with G2. So before I look at the stats, I'm going to go lane by lane. So Wonder against Hyrit. Hyrit's actually been pretty good so far this year, even though they've been losing. I've been somewhat impressed. but Wonder is the better player. Jankos against Razork. I think Razork is probably a better fit for the meta right now than Jankos, but Jankos has a better team overall and always finds a way to navigate every meta, just because his team is so good. Caps against Vetio. Caps is obviously better. Reckless and Mickey. Against Kabe and Vander, I don't think there's a huge difference in skill in the bot lane. It's just we have tempo players against like positional material players that like look for the late game, so they look fundamentally different from one another. So the gold per minute, they're both up over 1750. When we were looking at the XL match against Vitality, they both had lower gold per minute. They have faster game times. They're both in the 32 minute range. The kill differential in gold, like I expected, G2 has 1,740 in kill differential gold because they're always looking for that extra fight to just really cement their lead before they take a Baron, before they take Dragon Soul, before they take 1 or 2 towers and try to end off the game. Misfits is at minus 390, which is very good for a team that loses. What does that tell me? It tells me that in losses, they try to keep, they end up keeping the game relatively close, so they're not going to get completely blown out of the water. I don't know what that does to the kills and deaths, though. That might be a spot where we see an even higher scoring game in terms of kills from G2 because Misfits can keep it relatively close. Like instead of it going 5-1 or 5-2 in a team fight, maybe it goes 5-3, 5-4, and you have to fight once or two more times. The positional advantage, G2 has a 780 tower gold differential, which is very low for a team that wins as much as they do. So I think that one of the reasons that happens is because you have some of these games where they win, where it's like they only kill 7 towers. Because like, oh yeah, we've been absolutely dominating you. We fought you in front of your base 3 or 4 times, but instead of taking any of the towers, we just kind of ran backwards, killed one of your friends, and then we took Baron, and then we ran down middle again. So
Yes.
it's kind of just like the funny parts about their playstyle. That's kind of just how they are. So kills and towers, G2 is at 2,500. Kills and towers for Misfits is at minus 1,000. And G2 doesn't get that many Nash Baron fights because they're using the Baron fight to get kills to try to end the game. They don't necessarily care about the Baron. Ultimately, I think that both of these teams are in good spots for DraftKings. I think that if Misfits is 5 to 10% owned, I would want to double that. And then for G2, you kind of have to match the field just in general. So what do you guys think the Misfits ownership is going to be like tomorrow? And what would you do with it?
I agree with you. I think they're going to be 5 to 10%, and I would want to double it.
Yeah, if I was playing multiple lineups, I would have probably try to be over the field just in case Misfits do pull out that victory.
And I do think that, like, even to accentuate this, even if you're playing 5 lineups, one lineup with Misfits in it is 20% of your lineups, which right away gets you to double. And then, that lineup has a lot more upside for winning than, say, if you're like, oh, I'm just going to play Chaka and G2 or whatever, So I think that even if you are someone who's not playing a bunch of lineups, it's still profitable to look for leverage spots with underdogs, even in that situation.
This is a spot where I would potentially game stack. Maybe not like a 4-2-1 where you get 2 players from Misfits, but maybe you do like 4 players from G2, 1 player from Misfits, and then a 2 stack somewhere else, or even 4 players from Misfits, 2 players from G2, 1 player somewhere else. That would be pretty interesting, I think.
All right. Well, we'll move right on to our 4th game of the slate. We have the Mad Lions, who are 4-3, versus Rogue, who are 6-1. I think a lot of people are going to be down on the Mad Lions, even though I think it was just missteps from last week that put them in losing positions against Rogue, who seemed to be a bit more up-paced. So this is another game I think could be a bit bloody. But we'll start with you, Michael, on this one. Mad Lions versus Rogue. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so Rogue has obviously been winning much more than Mad Lions. The gold per minute is very close. Mad Lions at 1,800. Rogue is at 1,900. One thing that can cause that is high kills, and Mad Lions. I don't mean to sound like assuming people don't know what they're looking at, but like higher gold per minute doesn't mean like, oh wow, they're really good at playing the game of League of Legends. Higher gold per minute means that there are more opportunities to get gold, because if you didn't interact with the enemy champions for an entire game and you just went through CS and you just went through towers and you just allowed passive gold to accrue, there would be a limit to how much gold you could have in a League of Legends match. The difference is that Baron could theoretically spawn 3 or 4 times. You're getting 2,000 gold every time one team takes a Baron. You can get kills from the enemy team. That is really what increases the threshold for not threshold, the ceiling for some of these gold per minute values. So in their games, I guess gold per minute may be highly correlated with combined kill total. I don't know if anyone's ever done that statistical analysis, but I would assume that's the case. In terms of game duration, Rogue, I'm not surprised at all. They're at 33 minutes. Mad Lions is at 31 minutes. It's, I guess, kind of surprising because you do think of Rogue as a team that wants to play the macro game, and Mad Lions more of a team fighting team. I don't know what else I could really take away from that, though. And this next number actually surprises me a ton. The fact that Rogue has minus 1,890 kill differential gold. So like on average, they're getting about 6 or 7 kills worth of gold more than their opposing team. So what that tells me is they are very good at taking their advantage and like holding on to their positions. Like, oh, I got to Baron first. You tried to fight me at Baron. I killed you at Baron, and now I have all this gold to show for it. That's very interesting to me. It doesn't mean that they are going to have more kills in their games. It means that the differential between them and the opponent is going to be larger than you may expect. So maybe instead of it being like 5 kills, which I think a lot of people would think in a close game, it's on average 6 or 7, which is pretty cool. I do think of them as a positional team. They have 1,800. Mad Lions has 0 because they're a team fighting team. They're like the quintessential team fighting team. And they both have similar Baron numbers. I think Mad Lions is definitely alive. I didn't agree with the shadow change in the offseason because I didn't think that was really their problem. Elyoya has done better than I thought they would, I guess. Autoomne and Armut are pretty similar. Elyoya and Inspired are pretty similar. Inspired is better, though. Larson against Humanoid. I think Alan definitely prefers Larson. I think they're probably closer than that. And Hansama and Karzi are very close. Karzi's probably better long-term. And then Shrimby and Kaiser, very similar. I think Kaiser's better long-term. So this is a spot where I'd want to play Mad Lions. My only concern is, will Rogue actually fight them? And I think the answer is yes. So the best case scenario for our DraftKings lineups are Mad Lions getting out to an early lead and Rogue just being like, Hansama, go at it. Just try to fight them 1v9, 10 team fights in a row, and let's see what happens. So if Rogue wins the game and is dominant the whole game, it's going to suck for DraftKings scoring. What do you guys think about that? What do you think about their tendencies going into this match?
I feel like Mad Lions would definitely fight more and turn up the pace against Rogue. I actually think Rogue's pace this year has shifted up a little bit more. I know a lot of people compare them to like TSM of last year who didn't do fights, but I think that's kind of up-tempoed from there. But I will say that, yeah, if Mad does pop off, they're the 4th cheapest on the slate, and they can pretty much be paired with anybody. But we'll kick it over to you, Alan, for your thoughts on Mad Lions versus Rogue.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to be the resident Mad Lions hater. I'm starting to wonder if we're not accepting the fact that they're just worse than they were last year with Elyoya in Shadow's place. I think that, say what you want about Shadow, I think that he definitely fell off towards the end of last year, but he did drive a lot of the character of the team with that like team fighting style, and Elyoya doesn't exactly fit with that in my mind. Obviously, Armut's a huge upgrade. I can't even remember who.
Orome.
Orome, thank you. Yeah, his
Horrible.
name. But yeah, he was not good. So Armut is a big upgrade there. But right now, jungle's so important that I think that right now Mad Lions is in a little bit of trouble, and I just can't see a lane where I'm like, oh yeah, Mad Lions definitely gets ahead in this lane on the map. So I do think that like Rogue is a team that really thrives when they're getting their individual lane matchups advantages. So I think I would prefer the Rogue side here because of what I said earlier about the deaths per loss kind of weighing heavier to me. And a lot of folks who have studied this like DraftKings scoring stuff is that deaths per loss really drives whoever loses, kind of actually drives the scoring of the game over who wins. And so in that scenario, obviously Mad Lions is a great team to be up against because they're gonna scrap and fight and claw, and that was the same way with Rogue against Fnatic, and Rogue got 28 kills and completely smashed and ruined that slate for me. So maybe I have that a little too fresh in my mind as well. But so for me, I really, really like Rogue tomorrow. Like, I've been building lineups, and I think around 70% of my lineups had Rogue in it. I understand wanting to play Mad Lions too, because if they win, I do think that they're a team that just kind of drives that kill score up because Humanoid will die, Carzzy will die, or get awesome kills in team fights. But to me, I think that Rogue wins this game a lot of the time, actually. And to be honest, part of that is driven by their gold spent percentage differential. They're 6.8%, which is the same as G2. And Mad Lions is a 0.5% right now, which has a lot to do with their style of play, I think, because they are kind of coin flippy, and the schedule so far. I mean, it's a small sample. I would expect their number to go up by the end of the season, but I just think Rogue long term is a better team than Mad Lions. So I want to play Rogue because I think that teams against Mad Lions are going to score really well, and Rogue is going to win this game.
Before we move on, the one thing I would ask, again, for people who are watching this that might be very interested in like stats, like obviously people are asking for stats. Like I wonder how in love they are with stats, because like in the NFL, you have win totals, and win totals before the season starts are very impactful on like the future betting markets. In a game like League of Legends, I think that it's another spot where going into the season you would assume Mad Lions is going to have like a 700% win rate or a 70% win rate, 80% win rate. And that's really baked into our perceptions of them as players. And now we're at the point where you need to ask yourself, are they still going to hit that 70 to 80% mark, or are they going to be much less? And I think that our perceptions of those types of teams are pretty good. So I would think that there are stats that are highly correlated with that, if we're right. So like the fact that they are so much lower, and like Alan said, he expects it to go the gold spent percentage to go up, like for them to for it to be more positive in their
future games
for them. Yeah, in their future games for them. That is, I think, built up by the perception of them being a better team long term. So if you want to play against them and you think that the Shadow and Elyoya thing is a big mistake, maybe you say this is actually who they are, and you might have an edge. And that's kind of how like the public sucks out, and it's like they just keep playing Mad Lions, keep playing Mad Lions, keep playing Mad Lions because they used to have all these high kill total games, and then they get there because ultimately they were right. Those are the two scenarios, I think.
Yeah.
That you need to kind of pick a side when you're building your lineups at this point.
Agreed. And I would say that the pricing for this matchup in particular just lends itself to lots of combinations because they're two good teams and they're close. So I personally am picking a side, and I'm gonna go with Rogue tomorrow, but I don't hate it if you're like, I think that Mad Lions is way undervalued here, and I'm gonna play them instead.
Sure. Okay. Moving on to our fifth game of the slate, we have Fnatic sitting at 4-3 versus SK Gaming at 3-4. I mentioned it last week. Fnatic bouncing back, which is pretty nice. Seems like they've kind of found their groove, and maybe Yamato Cannon's starting to gel with the rest of the team.
Be bad.
Oh, or be bad, I guess. But yeah, I wanted to note that Fnatic's kills per game and deaths per game are the highest So I think either way, we'll get your guys' thoughts on this here in a minute. But I think you want to be on both sides with multiple lineups, just because they have been a very high-paced team and a lot of kills and deaths have been coming out of Fnatic's matchups. So we can start with you, Alan, on this one. Your thoughts on Fnatic versus SK Gaming?
You said them. I think that I will obviously have more Fnatic lineups. Fnatic is a much better team long term than SK. Now, Fnatic is also a team that has already shown us they can lose to any team on any day, and SK has a player in Tinks who I actually am starting to think is near the top of his position in the league. Obviously not like top 1, but top 3 to 5 I would see him being, and he could be better than Selfmade on the day. So I think that I will play both sides of this matchup for sure. Fnatic, maybe 70%, SK maybe 30% or something like that, because you can fit SK with the G2 lineups, you can fit SK with Rogue lineups, you can fit SK with Mad Lions lineups, and you can also kind of fit Fnatic in some surprising combinations with Rogue as well. Like I was building earlier today, and you can have Larson captain with Fnatic's mid laner Niski as well. So like there's a lot of potential in this game, and what you were saying is definitely true. If I pull up my bloodiness rating here, so Fnatic in an SK win, it's a 1,200, which is the highest on this slate in a bloodiness rating for me, and then in a Fnatic win, it's still above 1,000 and 1,059. So I think that both sides of this game is very viable, but obviously you have to factor in how much are these teams going to win, and I think Fnatic still probably wins 80% of the time. So don't get crazy with your SK lineups. Like don't build 10 SK lineups out of 20 or something like that. But if you're playing 5 to 10, I think you should build 1 to 2 SK lineups, because Fnatic has completely exploded when they have lost so far, and so it's always viable to play their opponent, I think, in daily fantasy.
All right, Michael, your thoughts on Fnatic versus SK Gaming?
Okay, so their kills plus tower goal differential, they both have very low, like they're both under 1,000. Most teams just have better numbers than that. In general, the gold per minute, SK Gaming has less gold per minute than a lot of the teams we've seen tonight. So like they're at 1720, Fnatic's at 1866. So that goes in line once again with the idea that games with more kills are going to have, they're going to inflate that gold per minute number a little bit. So maybe that's the play. Maybe the thing is like you need to take that gold per minute or combined kill ratio, see if there's a gigantic correlation there, and then just use one stat or the other. Because if you have two stats telling you the same thing, then it's gonna throw off the weighting of everything. Both teams play relatively fast games at 30 minutes. In Fnatic's case, that's because they have so many of these gigantic team fights that occur like from the 15-minute mark to the 25-minute mark. Whether they're winning or losing, they're going to fight you at Dragon, they're going to fight you at Baron. They're just going to kind of go for it, which is why they're very fun to watch. It's why people love watching them. The kill differential for gold is only 500 for Fnatic. That's shocking to me. And that's because in some of their losses, they've had these huge death numbers, and they've had a few very close matches as well. So the difference between those two numbers isn't as high as you'd see in like an LPL match, where you see like these ridiculous 24-8 games. Like the spread is just so much larger in a lot of those games. And then SK Gaming is only 200, which doesn't really mean much to me at this point. In regards to the players, like Tinks, I do like Tinks a lot. SK Gaming in this spot, like if it was SK against a random team, I probably wouldn't want that much of them. But because it's Fnatic and because of Fnatic's play style, you do feel obligated to play SK lineups as your primary stacks and secondary stacks, because in that 20 or 30% outcome where they do manage to pull off a win, you have to think that like 80% of those games, they're going to score highly on DraftKings. So that would be like, let's say it's 30%. So 30% times 0.8 is what, like 24, right? Yeah. And then how often are they the top stack of the day? That would be like 24 divided by 5. So we're looking at 4
or 5. Yeah. 4 point something.
Yeah. So 4.8, I think. I don't know. But basically the reason I say 4.8 is because I think that's really their legitimate shot at being the top stack of the night. So that's probably how much I'd want to limit my exposure to for them as my primary stacks. But you kind of feel like you have to do it. I need to run the numbers on that because I know that Awesemo runs out like a top stack percentage, and it's definitely some very simple calculation based off of their odds to win the match divided by the number of winners, and then like you can make adjustments. But I honestly wish I just like could quit my job, hire like 5 statisticians, and just go in on League of Legends. Because the game, there's so much information there that we should be able to figure out pretty easily that just no one's really taken the time to do it. But I don't even know if there's a market for that. Like, how do you even monetize that? You'd have to like sell the goods to like a team. Like that's the only chance you have. But yeah, you have to play both sides of this matchup. So before we move on, or before we end this video, well, are we doing both in the same one because the LCS salaries are up?
We're rounded into an hour on the LEC, so we should probably cut it LEC then LCS. But yeah.
Okay, so before we leave, what teams do you pick? 5 teams that you want to get exposure to? It could either be 2 teams from one game, 0 teams from a certain game. Like, who do you want exposure to tomorrow?
I love that you used 5 because it's exactly how many I have built my lineups with so far. So I want both sides of G2 Misfits, obviously like 70-30 G2, G2 70-30 Misfits. I want Rogue. I want Rogue in a lot of lineups. Probably 60 to 70% again. And then Fnatic-SK, same thing. I want exposure to both sides, but a lot more Fnatic than SK. So I have 15 lineups so far tomorrow. I think I was doing the math earlier on it. I've lost it already, but it was like 70% Rogue, around 60% G2, like 20% Misfits, 20% SK, and then like 50 or 60% Fnatic. So those are the 5 teams that I would choose for sure tomorrow.
Ghost, what do you think?
I think I would be looking at Schalke, G2, Rogue, and then both sides of Fnatic and SK Gaming.
I am extremely addicted to playing underdogs. I think that a double dog lineup is going to win very soon. I think we have 4 legitimate underdogs tomorrow. I think Astralis can win. I think Misfits can win. I think Mad Lions can win. I think SK can win. If I had to rank those underdogs, I would say Astralis is probably my favorite underdog. Then Mad Lions. Then SK, then Misfits. And SK maybe should be higher in my ranking because even in a loss against a Fnatic team, it could actually just be like a ridiculous number. And then favorite. I think G2 is probably my favorite. And Rogue is close. I like them both more than Fnatic tomorrow. Yeah. But that's basically it.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I want to thank everyone for watching today. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe on the Esports Department YouTube channel. I want to thank both of our analysts here, Michael and Alan, for joining us tonight. You can find Michael at League of Items and Alan at LCS Picks. You can also find myself on Twitter at xghostwriter90. And also, don't forget that you can sign up with the Esports Department and get 10% off a subscription using the code IH. Good luck to everybody on the slate, and let's make some money.
See ya.